My friend went back to his village, and he's like, you guys aren't going to believe this, but there's this guy, Jesus, who's raising people from the dead. I think he's God, right? And I think it's as simple as that. That act of passion is where the narratives could have been kind of flip-flopped a little bit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Shaitan, Iblis, right? We know him as Iblis, to bow down to Adam, right? And when Iblis said no, he was questioned, why did you not bow down, right? And Iblis said, well, because you made me from fire and him from clay. And when I was reading this particular passage, there was something that clicked into my head. We have the example of the world's first racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am reading the Quran, by the way. I'm not memorizing it though. I guess I'm supposed to.
No. There's no obligation for you to memorize it. There's no obligation for you to memorize it.
Because I'm only reading it in English.
That's fine.
I know very little Arabic. But
okay.
What have you read so far? Chapter 112 is the most important chapter of the Quran. Because this is the Quran where God himself reveals who God is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's very short, by the way. You'll finish it.
4 lines.
30 seconds, you'll finish it.
Yeah, 4 lines.
4
but
lines.
God himself tells us who God is. So we have no doubt. When we say we know who God is, we know because God told us. We don't need to play around. We don't need scholars. We don't need 400 years of contemplation and counsels because this is what you would expect God to do. You would expect him to tell you. He wouldn't leave it us to figure it out with our limited minds and intellect. He would say, here's who I am, here's what I need you to do, and here's how you're going to do it. Now, I'm going to see if you do it.
So I think when Brother Muhammad was talking about, Islam as a lifestyle and like how we ingrain these teachings and these acts of worship in our children, and to promulgate that successful manner and the kind nature of good character and all these things. These are all things that I think are very often overlooked, right? So Ramadan gives us that opportunity, to set aside that food for that extra time to do these very things. Even taking care of his animals, right? Like these are all creations of God, and we have to show mercy to them. We have a narration of a woman who was, I believe that she was a, how do I say it in like the nicest possible?
A woman of ill repute.
Yeah, a woman of ill
repute. Gotcha.
Yeah. So she ended up seeing a dog that was very thirsty, and from her shoe, she basically gave the dog a source of relief, right, through water, and that was her ticket to paradise. That act of worship was her ticket to paradise, right? So this is Islam and the beauty of Islam at its core, right? And now it's our job to recognize how we can validate, whether Islam is the truth, and not just from these beautiful actions and these beautiful teachings, but also from the sources that I had mentioned, one of those criteria. So like when I was going through that journey, and if I can just touch back on that story, I know this was a while back, probably close to about an hour ago, but if I saw somebody like, for example, Jesus raised the dead, right? And I had my friend come over to visit, and it took him about a month's time for this journey, I would be under the assumption that this man is God, because Jesus left, right? And then my friend comes to visit, and he's like, hey man, I thought your mom was dead. And now he sees my mom, baking and doing all these things, right? And I would tell him, yeah, there's Jesus came and he raised her from the dead. And then now my friend went back to his village, and he's like, you guys aren't going to believe this, but there's this guy, Jesus, who's raising people from the dead. I think he's God, right? And I think it's as simple as that. That act of passion is where the narratives could have been kind of flip-flopped a little bit. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because after looking at the actual Jesus of Nazareth, and he was pointing to the Father as being the one true God, according to John 17:3, that's what led me to the final revelation, which is the Quran. Now I had to run it through its own falsification test. The same thing. I had to take a look at the sources. I had to take a look at the scripture. I had to take a look at it. Is it sensible? And then is it from a sincere point of view, right? Because the same way that we talk about our kids and doing what's right for the kids, if we don't instill the actual truth into them of who God is and what he commands us to do, then we have effectively done our kids a disservice. Same thing with our community members when we're talking to them via streams, TikTok, shorts, and so on and so forth. So when I took that and I start vetting the process and I vet the source of this particular material, the source being God, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran claims that this book is from God. And then he gives us an additional source, an empirical source, which is Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? So I start vetting the character of this person. And I really just come down to 4 choices. This person was either telling the truth, this person was insane, this person was deceived, or he was being influenced by the devil, or this person is a liar. There's not a single other choice that comes to that's, you know, if a sensible, reasonable, and sincere individual were to be approached with this particular problem, there's no other possible solution. So if we look, what does the Prophet, peace be upon him, tells us in the book, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says that Satan is your enemy. And he gives us a beautiful example, something that, you know, every time when I read the Quran, and this comes back to the topic of building bridges, you know, between us and stuff. For example, when we take a look at Shaitan or Iblis, we don't believe that he's a fallen angel, right? We believe that he's a jinn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a separate creation. But these jinn, they have free will, right? So, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the jinn kind, and he created Adam as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Shaitan, Iblis, right? We know him as Iblis, to bow down to Adam, right? And when Iblis said no, he was questioned, why did you not bow down, right? And Iblis said, well, because you made me from fire and him from clay. And when I was reading this particular passage, there was something that clicked into my head. We have the example of the world's first racist.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's saying I'm better than him because I am black and he is white, or I am white and he is black. I am made from fire and he is made from clay, right? So in the book, in the Quran, how this kind of brings me back to my sources of vetting, right, is was he demon inspired, or was he talking to a demon, or was he talking to the devil? The devil is in the Quran labeled as accursed and an enemy. And he is displayed as someone who we should be fighting against, right? So if he was devil inspired and he's claiming to have the final revelation, then he would elevate the devil in some way, shape, or form, or he would try to deceive the person in some way, shape, or form to following the teachings of the devil. He would not be pointing you towards God. So if we take a look at those 4 criteria, one of them is now off the table and we're left with 3, right? He's either lying, he's telling the truth, or he is a madman, like he's just lost his marbles. So now we have to take a look. What was his character like? We have to vet the source. Was this man known to be truthful? Was this man known to be some type of a liar? Was he in it for himself? So I take a look at his historic lifestyle, and I have a wonderful book that I can recommend to you. It's called The Sealed Nectar. It's a very detailed book about his biography. I'm happy to get you a copy. You don't have to write it down. Don't worry. I'll get you.
Okay.
But so for example, I think of like the pagan times in Arabia, right? If this man was some type of a charlatan, or if he was trying to lie or cheat or steal in some way, shape, or form, or to elevate his own status, then why would he stop the trade in Arabia? So for example, this was the epicenter of trade. This was where all commerce went, both intellectual commerce and also physical commerce, right? They had caravans coming through this place. They also had intellectual commerce where the world-renowned scholars would come in and they would exchange knowledge and all this other stuff. And now comes this man who is known as Al-Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful one. And he's saying, hey, I received this revelation. Please come follow me. This whole paganism thing, right? In a nutshell, this whole paganism thing is hogwash. Like, this is ridiculous. So if he was a liar, he would have done everything in his authority at the time, as being one of the prominent kind of houses, right, tribes, to elevate his own status for personal gain, right? Rather, he did the polar opposite, and he's saying, yo, this whole caravanning and like for the purposes of visiting and doing these things to these false gods and these idols, this needs to cease, right? So based on his character and the biography, which, by the way, his biography is so detailed that they even documented how he slept, how he went to the bathroom, how he showered. All of these are provided to us in the way that he conducted himself. Okay. So if we've determined that he's not a liar, we have two options left. Either he's telling the truth, that he actually did have a revelation from God, or this guy is just completely insane. He's lost his marbles, right? So let's put the insanity to the test. This man was a businessman. This man was he was a wholesale broker, a merchant, and he was trusted by the highest echelons of the tribal society. Even his enemies entrusted him to hold their gold. Okay. So furthermore, when I read the biographies, and even from external sources, like if you read some of the things from what his enemies spoke about him, they spoke nothing but polite things. And if we take a look at the historical accomplishments that he had, such as being a military commander, such as being a lawgiver, such as being, the business professional that he was, and the successes that he had in his journey, there is nothing to allude to the point that this man was in some way, shape, or form intellectually deficient. Right? So now, reason and logic is pointing for me to believe that this man was telling the truth. And then I have to look at what is the truth that he's saying. He's saying that the only deen, the only way of life accepted to God is Islam. So what is Islam? Is peaceful submission to God, right? So you have to submit to God. And then he is claiming, that from this acceptance and following this creed that has come, this decree that came down, he gives us examples of other prophets that were also Muslim, right? So where does this word Muslim come into place? A lot of people, they sometimes get it confused interchangeably. They say, "Oh, are you Islam?" instead of saying, "Are you a Muslim?" So the connotation "mu" means you're actively doing something, and Islam is obviously submitting yourself to the one true deity worthy of worship. So when you take mu and Islam and combine it, you are a Muslim, which means you are actively submitting yourself to the one deity. So for example, we have a person that gives a call to prayer. That person is called a mu'adhin. So he is actively giving the call to prayer. He gives a call called the adhan, which is the call to prayer. So someone who is a mu'adhin is someone who actively gives the call to prayer, right? So now, point being is this person is saying that all of these prophets were Muslim. Adam was a Muslim. Abraham was a Muslim. Noah was a Muslim. Moses was a Muslim. Solomon was a Muslim. They all actively submitted their will to the one deity worthy of worship. And furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that Isa alayhi salam was a Muslim, right? He submitted himself. And then when I take a look at my experiences, when I read the Bible of when Jesus, peace be upon him, says, "I of my own self can do nothing." And I take a look at what you're telling me, that you have noticed sections that were added or certain sections that were removed to fit a particular narrative,
Yes.
I can no longer depend on the reliability of the source, right? Because these are things that I can empirically test. So naturally, if the Bible is pointing to the Father, and the Quran is pointing to the one deity worthy of worship, and Jesus is pointing to the Father, and Muhammad's pointing to the one deity worthy of worship, they're always pointing to someone higher, right? This is what made me accept that Islam and the Quran are the truth. Now, I believe that there are many truths in the Bible, The challenge that I have is reconciling where do I draw the line, right? So like, for example, I noticed that you asked your son, hey, we speak about God. What is Jesus, right? And he pointed up because he understands the concept of God, right? But if you were to ask him, was Jesus a Trinitarian? He would be like, what?
What's that?
Right? What's that, right? And this is where, when I take a look at the evolution of external doctrine, in order to justify an eisegesis, a template view,
JJ, I can't drink that.
is something.
Why? What have I been doing for the past 17 days?
Tell him, because it's commanded by God.
That's right.
Say, I'm not interested in the utilitarian faculties of what you present me, sir.
Well, they always, for some reason, this past 17 days, they've tried to offer me food, and I've explained it to them every day for 17 days. Nothing. Why? Are you serious? Anyway, I'm sorry.
No worries, man. It's a welcomed interruption, bro. Trust me, I'm a very interruptive learner. So like, anyway, my point is that when I take a look at these things, and when I take a look at what makes sense in a chain, I, as myself, my innate, we call it our fitra, which is our kind of like our what we were born with, our predisposition, our native predisposition, is that there is only one God. But it was the churches and a scholarly attempt, right, to try to make this, and albeit they had bad actors, I'm under the impression and belief based on evidences that they had bad actors to formulate a model to fit God into, right? And I don't think that Jesus preached this message. I don't think that the gospel of Jesus is actually located in the Bible. I have like the Gospel of Thomas, I have the Gospel of Luke, I have the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, John, I have 1 Timothy, I have the letters of Paul, I have all these things, but I don't have the actual gospel of Jesus in the same respect that I have these other gospels. However, I think that out of God's mercy, it was impossible for them to wipe the message completely, and fragments or golden nuggets of the gospel of Jesus were left intact, such as things like, I of my own self can do nothing, such as things like, I don't know the hour, such as things like, only the Father is the one true God. They could not wipe these things out because they had to build almost like a seamless transition where things had their degree of what I recognize as Christology, right? Like very poetic, very miraculous, non-historic kind of thing. Because when I would read the Gospels, in some of them, there was like no miracles. And then in others, it was like nothing but miracles. Yep. You know what I mean? And I respected the eloquence of the poetry, but I had to question the actual integrity of the message because it was unreliable, right? So when we meet with other Christian brothers and sisters, we invite them to come and check out the final revelation, which we believe to be the Quran, because it affirms certain things and it denies certain things. That way that we can use it as a criterion. And again, the reason why I believe it to be true was because of those standards that I mentioned to you previously, along with its own built-in falsification tests. All of this gives us the product that every single one of us on this stream are looking for: a better society, a better, healthier family, an easier way to live life, and not only just to see the physical changes that we see from fasting, but also to see the spiritual changes and get credit for them in the manner that they were due. Because all these experiences that you're having, to me, like, I am genuinely happy for you. And I don't want you to miss out on not only the physical reward, but I want the internal and the spiritual reward to come to you. Now, obviously, our goal here is not here to convert you to Islam. Our goal here is to build that bridge so you can understand where we're coming from, and to give you a taste test, not only by starving you, because that's really what we're about, but to actually give you that, experience of, we have people of all walks of life, of all nations, of all races, right? that are accepting Islam because they're seeing the actual code that is in there and the lifestyle that it provides being sensible, attainable, and most importantly, relevant from the time that the Quran came down until the end of time, until the day of judgment. So, you know, we, like me personally, and I'm sure you as well, we want to see all these things happen for the better, but it's obligatory on us to actually do the due diligence to make sure that we're headed in the correct direction. It's not about a thing of like saying, I'm right, you're wrong. It's more so, these are the experiences that I've had, and this is how I came to the conclusion that I came to. How about your experiences and the conclusion that you came up to? And if we can actually learn from one another, because every one of us here is open to being corrected. We all want everybody here to win. And I think that's the biggest takeaway of actually building these bridges, is to have that result where everyone wins. But the only way that that's going to happen is if we're upon truth. Because if every single one of us is on falsehood, every one of us is a loser. And if for some reason I leave the stage today and you are not at least in the least bit curious about the truth, I have failed, and I'm going to have to answer to that. Because if I could have filled in some type of gap, if I could have answered some type of question, right, then I should have done so, right? So yeah,
I am reading the Quran, by the way. I'm not memorizing it though. I guess I'm supposed to.
No.
No.
There's
You
no
don't have to
obligation for
memorize
you to memorize it. There's no
No
obligation for you to memorize it. No.
Because I'm only reading it in English.
That's fine.
I know very little Arabic, but
It's okay.
What have you read so far?
to 13.
To 13. Okay. What I would recommend.
I wouldn't mind giving this live reaction to something if you guys are open to it.
I'm sorry?
If you're open to getting a live reaction to something that's like 5 minutes long, you don't have to do the whole 5 minutes.
I really do apologize. I've been thinking about this for a while, but I've got a short period of time until iftar, and I cook.
No problem.
Yeah. We need to
No problem.
So
all I've been thinking about.
What I would suggest, is before read ahead and read chapter 18, which is Surah of the Cave. Chapter 18, read it in translation. I think you'll find it fascinating. And the other one that I would recommend is Surah Hijr, which is see, I know the names, I don't know the numbers. Surah Hijr is 15, I think.
15?
Is it 15? Yeah, 15. Surah Hijr. So read 15 and 18. I would recommend you read 18 first, then go back and read 15. So the thing with surahs in the Quran is every surah is self-contained.
Yes.
Every surah, all the message, everything you need is in that surah. Is self-contained. And so everything you need to know about the context of what you're reading is actually in the surah as well. There may be some historical references that you need to go, do some research on. But I think these two surahs, if you read them, contemplate on them, you'll actually get the essence of really why Islam is the way it is. And there's other things, but I would recommend those two to start with. I found those two very, very useful in other discussions myself.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to ask about the sealed nectar.
Problem. Yeah, and I'm happy to send you a copy, bro. It's a beautiful book, a very beautiful book.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful. It's a very detailed book on his biography. And one other thing there's another one called When the Moon Split. It's this one. But the Sealed Nectar has won like massive awards for the beauty and eloquence and the detail that it provides. One other thing I want to mention, just to marry Brother Muhammad's statement, the Quran is not a chronological book. So when you read the
I've
Quran,
noticed that.
Yes.
Yeah, like I was like, because like the Bible is set up so like you go from Genesis all the way to Revelations, and so I was like, this is kind of jumping around.
So no. So the way to
Oh.
understand the Quran, the way to understand very simply, the way to understand the Quran is the opening Surah Fatiha essentially is a prayer for guidance. This is simplistic. This I'll sorry. So the opening chapter, 7 verses, is actually a prayer where we beseech God to guide us. The rest of the Quran is an answer to that prayer. The rest of the Quran is an answer to that prayer. So what I would also say is probably read the shorter surahs in chapter 30 first. Sorry, the 30th part, juz 30. Yeah, juz 30. So read those first because they're really quick. They're really short. They're only sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 verses usually. And you'll get the essence of Islam very, very quickly, right? And it'll refer to various facts and things, which if you then read the longer surahs, which is what you're doing right now, you'll get some context. It's not chronological. The way to think of the Quran is it's God conversing with you. It's a conversation. When it was revealed, this is conversation written down, by the way. The Quran is discourse, conversational discourse written down. So what would happen is, given a time, a place, an incident, a revelation would be given to the Prophet, spoken. So the revelation would arrive, he would speak it instantly, no editing process. Nobody has time to figure out whether it's the right words in the right place or the right sentence. It is exactly as it's revealed. He's memorized it. He then recites it to his audience, who are his the men around him, and the scribes write it down. And these verses have then come to us. So every verse has a story, or more or less. And I mean simple. So every story, every sort of verse has a time and a place of when it was revealed, and that has a context to it. And where we get that context is in the exegesis work of the Quran, which is what we call the tafsirs. So the tafsir, Tafsir. So the tafsir work is the exegesis of the Quran. So the exegesis isn't in the Quran. The exegesis work is separate. And so that context is sometimes needed of, okay, I don't quite get what this verse is on about. If you go to the exegesis, it tells you when this verse was revealed, what the context was, who it was revealed for, why, etc., and all the stories there. But I would say start with the 30th part, the short surahs first, and you can read those during Ramadan very, very quickly. You can read probably one a night, 5-6 lines, really quickly. You'll get a short, sharp taste of what Islam is about. And then chapter 112 is the most important chapter of the Quran, because this is the Quran where God himself reveals who God is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's very short, by the way. You'll finish it.
4 lines.
30 seconds, you'll finish it.
Yeah, 4 lines.
4
but
lines.
God himself tells us who God is. So we have no doubt. When we say we know who God is, we know because God told us. We don't need to play around. We don't need scholars. We don't need 400 years of contemplation and counsels, because this is what you would expect God to do. You would expect him to tell you. He wouldn't leave it us to figure it out with our limited minds and intellect. He would say, here's who I am, here's what I need you to do, and here's how you're going to do it. Now, I'm going to see if you do it. I mean, and that's Islam, right? That's really what it is. And so when we listen to our brothers and sisters in Christianity who have this sort of idea that, yeah, we can't really know God. Yeah, in a sense, you can't know God. I mean, we know that. But you can know of God what he has revealed to you, at least. Right? I mean, obviously, we don't know the extent of God, but what he has revealed to us is he tells us who he is, why we're here, what our goal is, and how we achieve salvation. All of that is in the Quran. So,
so we get the qualitative aspect, not the quantitative aspect, right? That's what we don't understand. Like it's not confusing as to what God's mercy is, because we understand mercy. We just don't know the quantity. We don't know how his mercy is, because it's infinite in its vastness. But we get what mercy is, right? I just put in the private chat if you want a Quran that it has the Asbab an-Nuzul, which is the reasons of revelation. I found this one to be a really good one. My mother-in-law has this at her house. It's Holy Quran in today's English, but it has like every time a verse when it was revealed, if we have the knowledge of it historically, it'll say this was revealed at this point because of this incident that happened. So it kind of puts the picture of everything together on when it was revealed, why it was revealed, so on and so forth.
Do they sell these over at Books A Million?
I'm not sure. This is Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to mail you copies of these books, brother. You don't have to waste your own resources on this. I'm happy to send it to you.
I get paid by TikTok, so it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but it's more of a gesture. It's more of a
I forget he's a G, so like the rest of
look. One of the things Islamic teaching is to be generous. So to be generous is actually to be a good Muslim. So one of the things we try to do as often as possible is to be as generous as possible to others.
You're taking my reward.
It's an act of worship. It's an act of worship. For
but act of worship.
I don't want to be taking nobody's rewards.
Just so you know why we're offering it. Just so you know why we're offering it.
And also, when I first became a Muslim, I was invited to these brothers' house, and like they brought me in. This guy gave me this like amazing carpet that he got over here because you can get all different kinds of carpet. He got this, hundreds of dollars carpet. And I was just like, I could tell, even though I'd never really seen carpets that we pray on before. I was like, this looks really expensive. I said, because just back in my past, like how I was raised, people give gifts, it seems extravagant. I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate it, but I can't accept this. This is too much. Well, they're like, look, in Islam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he never rejected a single gift he was given. He never said, I'm not going to accept this. It's too much. It's actually from good etiquette to accept the gift because you make that person feel good that they gave it. But if you want to give it away later, so on and so forth, you can do that. Like the Prophet, peace be upon him, he would be given beautiful clothes, right, as a gift. He would wear it also to show that person that, look, I care about you and the gift you gave me, so I'm going to wear it and you'll see me wearing it, and that builds bonds. And then someone else would be like, wow, this is an amazing, shirt, clothes that you're wearing. And then he would take it and he would give it to that person who, bragged about it, right? So giving and spreading giving is something that it's very what's it called? I'm losing my English. Contagious. So it's really beautiful, mashallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, we can spend a whole other session on etiquette and something called akhlaq, which is actually a key part of Islam. Akhlaq, which is etiquette and mannerisms, because it's mannerisms and etiquette is actually a large part of spirituality, and we don't really often talk about that online because it's really something that we talk about within our circles of learning for Muslims, and it's not really spoken about much in what we call the dawah sort of scene because we're trying to just get the message across to people. But there's a whole sort of, it's like the iceberg principle, right? What you see online about Islam from us is probably just the top 2 or 3%, actually, not even 10%. There's a whole iceberg that's floating underneath, and it's huge and it's enormous and it's deep and it's intellectual and it's spiritual that we never get to share with people because we're still trying to figure out, look, God is one, and they argue with us on that, Yeah. So if you can't get past God is one, it's very difficult to explain the rest to folks, Anyway, your iftar is nearly up. We don't want to keep you anymore. How much more time do you have before iftar?
10 minutes. So I've got to cook. I eat the same thing every night. I eat chicken, spinach, mushrooms, and pancake. And
then you go for a workout, right?
Yeah.
Then he goes for a workout.
I do my workout pre-sahur, like right before.
Oh, alhamdulillah, yes.
And then I just suck down the water and coffee in the morning because like I get a big old thing of coffee, get a big old thing of water. I do videos on it every day.
And just glug. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
And then go to the bathroom 5 times.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. So
yeah, like we're not camels. We don't absorb it. And store it.
Exactly. By 10 o'clock, I'm I've been to the bathroom a whole bunch of times, and by 2 o'clock when I'm out there working in the heat, like my mouth is dry, and I've got I'm sweating and I'm spitting the sweat out of my mouth because I don't know the rules. But apparently that's acceptable. Yeah, I got to go cook my chicken, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Please use us as resources. We'd love to have you back on. I know the brothers have their own streams, and I know that I'll speak for myself. You're most welcome at any point. And
shukran.
my final thought is a big thank
I agree. Yeah, it's been a
you.
pleasure to meet you.
Very,
Absolute
very
pleasure.
big pleasure. Yeah.
You got yourself there, some, good mannerisms, and we appreciate you, and that respect that you have goes a long way, because I think a lot of times people in the seeking of getting, maybe heard or their point across, and hope I've never been guilty of it either, tend to be quite disrespectful, right? And
Yes.
so we appreciate you being a good neighbor. And I'd love to have you on my channel too. I ask more questions than I talk, so I might grill you a little bit, but
That's fine. I need a good
honored.
grilling. But
well, speaking of grilling, we could do a grilling and grilling. Like, I'm cooking some barbecue while asking the hard questions. That would be great.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, you're talking to a Texan here, right? A Texan barbecue. I mean, it's like sort of beef ribs that are like 6 foot long, right? I mean, not like the stuff we have over here.
I was over at Fort Worth, and they're like, "Where you want to stop?" I was like, "Barbecue place." But
Rudy's, man, Rudy's.
You talk about the one in downtown Dallas, or what are you talking about?
They got a couple around, but it's RUDY''S. They got the best barbecue sauce I've ever had in my life.
I'm getting.
It's so good, man.
Okay, you're making
you can order.
now.
I think they deliver it now. I bet you. I haven't looked. I bet you go to Amazon and they got Rudy's barbecue sauce on Amazon. I bet you they do.
My first year on TikTok, it was, and this is I did Christian stuff. I would do the Bible and verses, because I've got I went to Bible college. That's what I did with my GI Bill from the Army, and I would watch my brothers and sisters in Christ attack Muslims. I would watch and it made me so mad, because they didn't realize that there was Muslims in my family. They figured it was just like this. We've got to tell these people they're they're going to hell, and they're just evil, blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, that's the same God. It is the same God from the Jews, and we worship the same God from the Jews. Do you realize that we're not that different? And so that's why I stopped doing Christian content, because once I started speaking up for the Muslims, they attacked me. And I was like, you're not Christians. You're zealots, and you're zealots behind this weird conservative Jesus that's like this almost hateful deity, and it doesn't make any sense. So then I started doing like Japanese anime, which is like cartoons, and got 600,000 followers. And then I started doing the news, and jumped up to 1.3 million. But
the irony of all of this is that Jesus is a Middle Eastern man.
Yep.
Born amongst actually neighbors to Muhammad, and probably was of a similar complexion with dark hair, and not the blonde hair and blue eyes that we perceived in the West.
I still have those pictures in my house, and I because every time I see them, I'm like, well, that's an idol. And do you realize we got idols just hanging up in our house?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think Maurice, you should let our guest go. He's been wonderful. Sure. Absolutely,
yeah. Barakallahu feek, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you guys so much for supporting the stream. There was some new memberships. All proceeds go towards dawah efforts and purchasing literature for guests and stuff like this. So thank you guys so much. Please be sure to share the content. Be sure to follow at Bald News Network on his TikTok. And
even if you have hair,
we
don't discriminate.
We don't discriminate. Yeah.
Definitely give me a follow as well. I need to get to 1,000 followers, because I can't join lives on TikTok. It's ridiculous. So I want to be able to join cool live streams like his. I know he also plays some games. I'm a gamer myself. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're all committing acts of worship here. Alhamdulillah.
Thanks to all the mods during Ramadan. Thank you so much to all the mods. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khairan, brothers and sisters, for all your efforts and your time and your patience.
Ameen, ameen ya Rab. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.